Before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, we're at 47 past the hour. Let's get you caught up on market action today. Equities trading at higher levels, although, to be fair, we are off the best level of the day. Consumer discretionary names helping to lead the S&P to a gain of more than 1.3% right now. We're at 2,430. Also, a lot of strength in the energy group as crude oil recovers from that humongous drop yesterday. We were down 24% at New York trading yesterday. Right now, the gain is nearly 24%. WTI trading 25.20. Dow Industrial Average is up 1.4%, and strength in Infotech sending the NASDAQ Composite higher by about 3.4% today. Many of the information tech stocks are trading up. Apple shares right now better by 1%, although the standout performer, clearly Facebook, stock is up more than 7.5% right now. And shares in Netflix also being actively traded today. Netflix shares right now better by more than 8%. Over in the bond market, U.S. 10-year Treasury rising. Actually, we're down in yield by nearly 13 basis points, 1.06%. We've got more move to the strong side for the dollar, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up 1.2%. Much weaker yen here, 110.31, and the euro is down more than 2% against the greenback at $1.690. You're caught up on markets. Let's get back to balance of power.
Thank you so much, Doug Krisner. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Paul Sweeney, sitting in for David Weston. One of the things I think economists and investors are trying to do is pencil in as best they can some scenarios for the remainder of 2020 in terms of economic growth. Is it a V-shaped recovery? Is it a U-shaped recovery, or an L, or maybe even something worse that we haven't thought of yet? Yelena Shulyetyeva, Bloomberg's senior U.S. economist, joins us with her thoughts. Yelena, just set the table for us here. What is Bloomberg Economics forecasting right now for the remainder of 2020?
Right. We are in the middle of revising the forecast. We will publish the forecast tomorrow morning, but it obviously looks like it's going to be a decline for the year in economic growth, with most of the impact of the negative impact concentrated in the second quarter of this year. And even if the virus and virus-related quarantines and closures of businesses ends in the second quarter of the year, we will not see V-shaped recovery or U-shaped recovery, as you were mentioning. We are thinking more like a hockey stick sort of profile. So we think that the recovery in the second quarter will not be as quick. So I think the key part of it is how fast the labor market can recuperate, and I think we will not see much strength even in the third quarter of the year. So just to put it in perspective for you, this morning we received jobless claims data, and that was a sharp decline of 70,000, but it's just a tip of an iceberg here of what is going to come in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's where a lot of people are saying, geez, the unemployment is kind of the first thing we're starting to see as we hear stories about layoffs. Let's talk about the consumer here, because what has been driving the U.S. economy has been the consumer. You've been, kind of writing about that a lot over the last several years, and a big part of the consumer has been the strong job market here. How are you thinking about how the consumer might fare coming out on the other side of this?
So, again, we're already starting to see job losses. So jobless claims are going to spike, and the only thing that will limit the extent of an increase in jobless claims is basically how the states will be able to handle all the filings. So that means that employment rate will probably rise. We might see doubling in the unemployment rate by the end of the second quarter of this year. And that will obviously mean a lot of lost income. So it will be a shock to personal income growth, which will result in declines in durable goods spending and services. So we think that the non-durable spending will hold a little bit better because we will continue to spend on essentials, whether it's through Amazon or buying food supplies. In fact, in the first quarter, we think that growth will remain positive, and retail sales for the month of March will be quite okay because we are stockpiling. But in the second quarter, we'll see a sharp decline in auto sales, in unnecessary services, things like leisure, hospitality, travel, all recreational activities, and so on.
So, Yelena, we've had, it seems like a much more concerted effort coming out of Washington in terms of fiscal stimulus. Based upon what we know so far, do you think these are good first steps? How much more do you think is needed? What are you guys factoring into your models?
We absolutely need much more. We need a quick and a blunt increase in fiscal help. I think, the price tag on that $1.2 trillion package that the administration is seeking is getting bigger and bigger every day. So the further we delay the approval of it, the bigger the price tag will become. So if it's checks sent out to people within the next couple of weeks, that could be meaningful, I think, and it's very much comparable to growth in nominal GDP for the year as a whole. So, for example, GDP grew something like $800 billion in 2019. The $1.2 trillion package exceeds that amount. So it could be a meaningful thing, but it just needs to be done quickly. Otherwise, it just won't matter.
Is there anything the Fed can do? It was arguably preemptively moving, or certainly moving ahead of the administration and of Congress. Is there anything left in the Fed's toolbox that could have any kind of meaningful effect?
I think the Fed still has a lot of ammunition. They can increase the size of quantitative easing. What they are doing right now, they are coming up with yet another program every day to ensure the smooth functioning in the financial markets. They are helping particular financial institutions. They are helping a broader array of non-financial companies through commercial paper facility, for example. So they will continue to help financial markets using the tools that they actually used during the financial crisis of 2008. And as I already said, they can still increase the amount of QE. So all this will be helpful, but the big elephant in the room, once again, is fiscal policy. And without implementation of a big fiscal package soon, we will be talking about a prolonged recession here.
Elena, thank you so much for joining us here. You've been a star here, appearing and helping us really get a handle on the economic impact going forward. Elena Shiletieva, Bloomberg's senior U.S. economist, joining us on the phone. We have continued strength in the markets. We have a little bit of a move up in the equity markets here. We have the S&P up 2.4%, the Dow up 2.45%, and the NASDAQ up 4.2%. So a little bit of a pickup just in the last half hour. Crude up 24%, WTI crude. So continuing to move there. And that 10-year Treasury up 1 and 11/32, pushing that 10-year yield down to 1.048%. Looking at the dollar, boy, what a day it continues to be for the DXY index. We're now trading at 102.66. That's up 1.5%. So just extraordinary. The VIX coming in a little bit down to 70. That's down 6 points. Coming up, Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly. I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg. We have more to come. Stay with us.
Have you ever thought?
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Main forces driving work on climate change, carbon emissions and air pollution in China did fall dramatically in February. That silver lining, though, turned out to be temporary. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Our relationship with Asia is simple. Find the most experienced journalists.
These countries will need each other more and more in the future.
Let them gather the best data and experts.
Let's get to Singapore now and our guest.
Then bring everything they find straight to you.
Let's talk about where you are. There's quite a lot of headwinds there too.
Actually, it's not simple. It's just better. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2020, live from my home in New Jersey and from his home in New York, Jason Kelly. I'm Carol Masser. Our theme on this Thursday, Jason, it does seem like financial markets catching their breath just a little bit as more details are coming on potential plans to help both financially to help out the impact from that virus and health plans and health moves and initiatives to directly stop the virus.
That's exactly right. We're talking about physical and fiscal, I think, to a large extent here, Carol. And listen, it's a day where only a move of 2% which used to be a big deal, feels like, oh, okay. Let's, as you say, pause and catch our breath. Let's catch our breath for a second with Doug Krisner. He's got an update on where that trade has gone and where it may be headed. What's up?
Well, I'm looking at the S&P 500 rising by 1.8%. Consumer discretionary out in front of this advance. Also want to highlight energy stocks, which are moving to the upside, given a recovery that we're seeing now in crude oil. WTI in the New York session recovering nearly all of that big drop yesterday. We were down 24% in New York trading in the last session. Right now, better by about 24%. We're at 25.17 in the active contract. Dow Industrial Average better by 1.6%. You guys were talking about this massive monetary and fiscal stimulus that will be unleashed. The Fed today establishing temporary dollar liquidity swap lines with 9 other central banks. This will allow foreign central banks to meet the needs of companies and financial institutions rushing to get a hold of dollars. You know, the global payment system really is under severe strain right now. And look at the price action in the dollar. If you look at the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, we're up by nearly 1.4%. So the dollar gaining traction against the majors. Flip side of that has a weaker yen, 110.38, and a much weaker euro at $1.0675. We're seeing a recovery in many of the big cap tech names like Tesla, Netflix, Facebook. Facebook shares alone are up more than 7%. That's helping to lead the NASDAQ composite higher by about 3.5% right now. We had some weak eco data, not surprising. First-time jobless claims up at a level of 281,000. And then if you look at that regional manufacturing survey from the Philly Fed, the biggest slump that we have seen for the month of March. 10-year Treasury yielding 1.04%. So we're coming in by nearly 15 basis points in yield. You're caught up on markets. Let's get back to Jason and Carol.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. And Carol, as we have tried to do every day, we've got a team of experts to break this down. One of the top doctors looking at this, Amy Compton-Phillips, back with us. She'll join us in just a few minutes from Washington, the Pacific Northwest, where we know a lot of lessons have been learned.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also going to get insight into the AIDS researcher chasing to find a coronavirus treatment. It is the cover of the magazine this week. It is a must-read for everyone to kind of understand the race to find a cure. We've got really a great group of experts because we know everything's being impacted by the virus. So we're going to check in with academia, business schools specifically. We're going to talk about more businesses, how they are running because of the virus and some of the struggles that they're dealing with. Of course, markets, leisure. We've got the dean from one of the top business schools. We're talking about the Columbia Business School. And we've also got the CEO of Land's End.
And we're going to talk to the top executive at CVS who is dealing with this crisis on the front lines. And then to wrap up the show, a friend of the show, guy who we've had on before, and I know you've binge-watched his program, John Tapper, the host of, John Taffer, excuse me. He is the host of Bar Rescue.
All right. First up, though, let's set the Business Week agenda. And we do have with us Ritika Gupta. She's markets reporter at Bloomberg News. She's back in our Interactive Brokers studio. Also with us is Dave Wilson, stocks editor at Bloomberg News, again, in our Interactive Brokers studio. We have a small staff there, and you guys are troopers to be there. Dave, I do want to start with you. Jason was pointing out on our prep call for the broadcast, you know, we are so used to these very substantial, significant moves, several percentage points. Today, it feels like, wow, nothing's happening.
Well, that's if you're looking at the indexes. Let me tell you, if you're looking at individual stocks, it is a whole different story. Let me tell you how extreme it's become. Almost a tenth of the S&P 500, almost a tenth, is higher by at least 10% in today's trading. If you look at the other side of the ledger, there are only 3 stocks that are down more than 10%. American Airlines, Harley-Davidson, and a lithium producer, Albemarle. That's how things are going. So, and you see it even more in the smaller companies than you do in the larger ones at this point. The Russell 2000 index is up 5%. I mean, it just goes to show you, people are willing today to take the kind of risk that they wouldn't have been just yesterday or certainly not a few weeks ago.
So, Ritika, come on in here, because one of the stories that we've been following very closely is oil, and a huge jump today, right?
You're right. It's just a massive rebound, up, 23% in one day. But we are still just, of course, at $25 a barrel. Obviously, we got this news of Trump weighing in on the price wars, giving it some support. S&P 500 Energy Index, the best performing sector today, but yesterday closed down more than 14%. And some strategists now saying it could go below $20, Citi saying $17, and some traders even pointing to prices falling deep enough that some physical players will start actually buying oil to store it. That's known as the contango trade. Now, sticking with oil, but actually looking more at the credit side. So, of course, we've seen those spreads blow out in high yield, and energy being a large weighting with them. But we're also seeing it a lot in the investment grade side too. For instance, companies like Marathon Oil, their 2025 debt trading at just 75 cents on the dollar. That's a sign that their credit rating really at risk here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're watching that, right, in terms of how vulnerable from a debt picture some of those energy names are. Dave, I want to bring you back in because I feel like Jason and I had so many conversations yesterday, some with, and even I think over the week, in terms of the extent of some optimists saying, slow down. At some point, you're going to have investors start to look at, different names that were so expensive just a month ago that are now saying this is a deal, and that when we get on the other side of this virus, and that this might be an entry point. And I feel like we're starting to see some of that.
Oh, absolutely. It's consistent with the kind of gains that I'm talking about. HCA Healthcare, you talk about a company that's going to be under stress potentially in the next few weeks as the coronavirus spreads. They're the biggest U.S. publicly traded owner of hospitals, and the shares are up 25%. Now, granted, I mean, they've taken a beating along with a whole lot of other shares over the past several weeks. There's no question about that. HCA peaked back on February 5th, and if you look through yesterday, the shares were down 55%. So, I mean, there's still a long ways to go to make back that kind of a loss. But at the very least, you're seeing, stocks like HCA show some strength here. So, people are willing to step in and buy where they wouldn't have been, like I say, just a day ago.
All right. Ritika, final word to you. Anything else that you're especially keeping an eye on here as you're looking across all these different markets?
Well, of course, we're all keeping an eye on the dollar, which has been at a record high in that dash for cash and liquidity. But earlier, it was up against all its G10 peers. But we are actually seeing it coming off session highs, perhaps on that Fed announcement of expanding those swap line facilities to those 9 extra central banks. And I mean, if I walk you through some of the other FX moves today, greenback up against now 6 of its peers. And leading the gains, we're seeing some of those commodity currencies, the Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar, as oil rebounds. The Norwegian krona now also up after those threats of central bank intervention as well. And the pound I've also been keeping an eye on. Right. That's kind of fluctuated between gains and losses, but we are still at the 116 handle after the BOE cut interest rates to 0.1% and announced bond purchases. Of course, the pound have actually dived to its weakest since 1985 against the dollar in that dash for cash, surpassing Brexit vote lows even.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Ritika Gupta is markets reporter for Bloomberg. Dave Wilson, stocks editor. He'll be back with us later on with his chart and stock of the day. Coming up with us, Carol Master, we are going to check in with Amy Compton-Phillips out in the state of Washington. She's been following this so closely.
All right, let's get a check on your world and national news headlines. For that, to Bob Moon in our 1130 newsroom. Hi, Bob.
Carol, Jason, President Trump has turned his attention to making drug treatments available to coronavirus patients, and he offered a status report at the daily coronavirus briefing. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
The Food and Drug Administration is fast-tracking tracking it's okay to prescribe drugs previously approved to treat conditions from malaria to arthritis to other respiratory viruses, the president said.
We will know which medicines are safe and which medicines are working the best. We have a couple that we're in really good shape on, and that's for immediate delivery. Immediate, as fast as we can get it.
The FDA will monitor the patients who receive these drugs to see if they're safe and effective and the dosage works. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Also at that briefing, in response to a question, the president said the government should take an equity stake in companies that need bailouts. He also said he supports restrictions on bonuses. Democratic Representative Ben McAdams has tested positive for coronavirus and is now under self-quarantine in his Salt Lake City home. He told NBC's Today that he feels terrible.
I'm feeling pretty bad. I think this is probably the worst cold I've ever had, but we're getting by.
2 members of Congress have now tested positive for coronavirus, and the news has sent other lawmakers into self-quarantine as a precautionary measure and raises questions over the potential public health risks of the House and Senate continuing to convene in Washington, even as both chambers rush to enact relief measures as the coronavirus crisis spreads throughout the United States. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast. Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC studios on TuneIn today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we're receiving information on a couple of situations, not the least of which from the Fed, a temporary dollar liquidity swap line with nine other central banks. This will allow foreign central banks to meet the need of companies and financial institutions as they rush for dollars. Look at the price action in the greenback against the majors. A much stronger dollar with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rising by 1.3%. We've got a weaker yen, 110.48, and the euro down more than 2% right now against the dollar at $1.684. Recovery in equities being led in large part, by higher oil prices boosting energy shares. WTI crude oil right now up 24%. We're trading 25.28, and the S&P 500 energy group helping to send the S&P 500 up by 1.6% right now. So markets are still in the process of digesting this massive monetary and fiscal measures. We had the Bank of England earlier today cutting rates to a record low 0.1%. Dow Industrial Average is up 1.8%. NASDAQ Composite better by just about 3.6% right now. Shares in Ford trading down by 2%. The company has suspended the dividend. Management had repeatedly vowed to maintain this even in spite of an economic downturn. And Ford is also saying that it will fully draw on two separate credit lines worth about $15.4 billion. Additionally, Ford has retracted its 2020 earnings guidance. U.S. 10-year Treasury yielding 1.06%. That's a quick look at markets. Back to Jason and Carol.
All right, Doug Christner, thank you so much. There were many headlines coming out of this morning's coronavirus task force update, a lot of it having to do with healthcare and treatments really aimed at controlling the virus or treating the virus, excuse me. So I do want to make some sense out of it because there were a lot of headlines. Dr. Amy Compton-Phillips is back with us. She's Chief Clinical Officer, Executive VP at Providence St. Joseph Health, on the phone once again from Everett, Washington. Remember, we've talked with her several times over the last few weeks, and her hospital, the system, is where the first U.S. case of the virus was confirmed. Dr. Compton-Phillips, nice to have you back with us. Forgive me as I stumbled at the top, but I was reading through some of the headlines and just trying to remember all the things that we got out of the conference this morning. The president touting a malaria drug as a potential coronavirus treatment. You also heard things about early coronavirus drug trials yielding mixed results. Where are we? You're there on the front line. What's going on? What do you see as potential realistic treatments for this?
Yeah, I think what's really important is for us to have a systematic approach to this, that we can end up playing whack-a-mole if we go after the next bright, shiny object. And so what we've been really doing here on the West Coast, which at the moment, we're neck and neck with New York, not that we want to race to the front of the line for this, but for having the most cases in our system right now, we're treating it's upwards of about 800 people that either have known or suspected coronavirus. And we're trying to do several things. One is we're trying to make sure that we can triage people appropriately and get them to the right location. So that if you happen to have symptoms of the virus, and because the testing's taken so long, we can't definitively say, we do everything we can to take care of you in your home if you are stable enough to be in your home, so we don't overwhelm the healthcare system, right? We're trying to make sure that in the hospital, if you have to go into the hospital, we're putting you with other patients that also have COVID as well, and so that we can minimize use of the PPE. And then if you need acute care, we have several ongoing trials of medications, including the malarial drugs that the president talked about today, including some of the direct antivirals that you heard about in the past few days. So I think by thinking through this systematically rather than, ping, 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 all over the place, that we can actually kind of get a handle on what's going on.
Well, and Dr. Compton-Phillips, it's really interesting insights. And I also wanted to ask you what you're seeing, because one of the headlines that I think has grabbed a lot of people is the population that's being infected. And it feels like the narrative has shifted there as well in terms of many more young people being not just diagnosed, but hospitalized. Are you seeing that? Have you seen that? And what should we be taking from this latest data?
Yeah, that was an interpretation by the news previously that young people don't get infected. In all the articles and conversations that we've had with the physicians in China, with the physicians in Italy, young people do get infected. It's just that they tend to recover at a much higher rate, and so that the mortality is higher in patients that are older and people that have underlying health conditions. But young people absolutely get infected, and we're seeing that same thing here. They end up less often in the ICU on a per capita basis, but they do end up seriously ill, and it's one of the reasons why it's really we are doing everything by hook and by crook to make sure that we have enough capacity in ICUs, because we want to save every single person that comes to us with this bad disease, and not have people dying for lack of access to health care.
Is there some medication out there, perhaps existing, a drug that's already in the system already, the FDA has pretty much signed off on, that we can see then maybe another use of?
We have actually tested a couple different drugs that have, in other kinds of viral diseases, have antiviral activity that have not worked, but we're absolutely looking at the array. And in fact, that the malaria drug that the president mentioned, hydroxychloroquine, is one that's been on the market for decades. And so that has shown early promise, particularly in China, which is why we're standing up the study here as well. And then the antiviral drugs, while it hadn't been approved yet, it was being developed for Ebola, but had another use, and that's the one right now that we have a couple different clinical trials going on to see really if this does work.
Dr. Compton-Phillips, only about 40 seconds left here. Got to ask you, since we've talked a lot about it, testing, is it ramping up? How soon will it be, in your estimation, to the point where it's really rolling in an effective way?
testing is still a dramatic bottleneck. And so part of the challenge is that if for every patient that wants to be tested or every person that wants to be tested and doesn't have major symptoms, it means people with significant disease in a hospital somewhere is not getting tested. And so having really clear, when you have a shortage, you have to figure out who gets what first. And we are in a shortage situation. And as we ramp up over the next month, it'll get better. But right now, we really need to use those tests for the people who need them the most.
Listen, we always thank the time that you give us. Dr. Amy Compton Phillips, thank you. Chief Clinical Officer, Executive Vice President at Providence St. Joseph Health, on the phone from Everett, Washington. And as we've been saying, Jason, they've been dealing with it from day one. So really seeing how it grows and how, what is working in terms of treatment. But you can see still a struggle. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Technology shares are leading a modest Wall Street advance. Traders are breathing a bit easier as global policymakers unleash a range of measures to ease the turmoil. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 241, the S&P 500 up 28, the Nasdaq Composite up 231. Oil is posting its biggest gain since 2008 after President Trump said he'd get involved in the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia at the appropriate time. Crude is up 24% at $25.34 a barrel. With oil a bargain, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin says the U.S. should buy up to $20 billion in oil to fill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for a decade. He told Fox Business, let's go out and buy. Add Cirque du Soleil to the list of employers slashing payroll due to the pandemic. It cut 95% of its workforce, citing the forced closure of all of its shows worldwide. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning.